Things are getting tense behind the scenes for the Miami Dolphins, and we need to talk about something that could have a real impact on this team. Training camp is the time when players fight for jobs, earn the coach's trust, and prepare for the season, but suddenly the Dolphins are dealing with a wave of injuries at the worst possible moment. And guys, some of these injuries could completely change important position battles. I really want to see this Dolphins team healthy and ready to fight for something special this season. I know many of you feel exactly the same way, but now Zane Gonzalez is week to week, Juju Brents is expected to miss this week, Clelin Ferrell could be sidelined for multiple weeks, and Dante Trader Jr., Kevin Coleman Jr. and Ben Sims are also dealing with situations that will keep them away from practice. So I want to know where you stand on this. Which injury worries you the most right now? Are you more concerned about what is happening at cornerback with Juju Brents, or do you think Zane Gonzalez getting hurt could completely change the kicking competition? Write your opinion in the comments because I really want to see what Dolphins fans are thinking. And if you have been a Miami Dolphins fan for more than 15 years, hit that like button hard, because after all the seasons you have been through with this team, you already know how quickly things can change in Miami. Alright, my friends, let's talk about these injuries, because Jeff Hafley just gave us several important updates, and there's a lot we need to discuss. Let's start with one of the most surprising developments. Kicker Zane Gonzalez is now considered week to week. That is a major development because Gonzalez was right in the middle of a kicking competition with Riley Patterson, and according to what we had seen through the first 2 weeks of training camp, Gonzalez appeared to be winning that competition. Both kickers performed well during Saturday's practice at Hard Rock Stadium in front of the fans. Both were perfect that day. But over the practices from Monday through Friday, Gonzalez had made a couple of kicks that Patterson could not make. It was not a huge gap, but Gonzalez had done enough to put himself in a very good position. Now everything changes. When a kicker misses multiple practices while competing directly against another player for one job, every missed day matters. Patterson gets more opportunities. He gets more repetitions with the operation. And most importantly, he gets a chance to show the coaching staff that they can trust him while Gonzalez is unable to compete. That could put Riley Patterson in position to become Miami's kicker once again. It is unfortunate timing for Gonzalez because he had done exactly what a player in a training camp battle needs to do. He had performed well and had started creating some separation. Now his health could erase that advantage without Patterson even needing to beat him directly on the practice field. And unfortunately, Dolphins fans, the injury news does not stop there. Cornerback Juju Brents is also expected to miss this week. It is unclear exactly when Brents suffered the injury. He was not at the practice at Hard Rock Stadium on Saturday, and Hafley did not reveal the specific injury. At this stage of the offseason and preseason, the Dolphins do not have to provide every detail about what a player is dealing with. The encouraging part is that Hafley indicated this is not expected to be a long-term problem. That is important because Brents has a real opportunity in this Miami secondary. The Dolphins were preparing for a very interesting test against Washington, and this was going to be a valuable week for the cornerbacks. Washington has a talented group of receivers, including Terry McLaurin and Stephon Diggs, along with other options such as Van Jefferson, Treylon Burks, and Luke McCaffrey. Going against that group in a joint practice would have given Miami's defensive backs a serious challenge. And Brents was one of the players I really wanted to watch. He has shown promise, and now the question becomes how quickly he can get back onto the field. If his absence really is short-term, this may only be a temporary interruption. But every practice he misses gives somebody else an opportunity to make a move. The biggest name to watch because of that is Jason Marshall Jr. Marshall now has a chance to strengthen his position in this secondary. I am not saying 1 week automatically puts him ahead of Brents, but if Brents misses time and Marshall performs well, the coaches are going to notice. And Marshall is not the only cornerback who benefits from the extra opportunities. Ethan Bonner and Alex Austin now have more chances to establish themselves in Miami's secondary. When a player ahead of you is unavailable, you cannot control when he returns. What you can control is what you do with the snaps that suddenly become available. That makes this a very important week for those players. There was also a roster move that could be connected to the situation. Miami claimed cornerback Amari Barno-Harvey on Friday afternoon, and the timing becomes interesting with Brents missing practice. We do not know that the move was directly caused by Brents' injury, so there is no reason to pretend we do. But Miami adding another cornerback while dealing with an injury at the position certainly gives the team another option. Then we get to another player whose situation might be even more difficult because of where he stands on the roster. Recently signed edge rusher Clelin Ferrell is also week to week, and the expectation is that he could miss multiple weeks. That is brutal timing for Ferrell. He is a veteran and a former top 5 draft pick who has had some good moments in the NFL, but he arrived in Miami right around the beginning of training camp in July. That means he already had limited time to learn the system, compete for snaps, and convince this new coaching staff that he deserves a place on the final 53-man roster. Now he could lose multiple weeks. Think about how difficult that is. Training camp is where a player in Ferrell's situation has to make his case. He needs practices. He needs preseason snaps. He needs to show the coaches what he can do inside this defense. If he cannot get onto the field, other edge rushers continue practicing while he is watching. That does not mean his chances are automatically over, but it makes his road to the roster much harder. If Ferrell returns quickly and immediately makes an impact, the conversation can change. But if this injury keeps him out for several weeks, he could run out of time to prove that he belongs on the 53-man roster. And there are still more injuries to discuss. Safety Dante Trader Jr. and rookie wide receiver Kevin Coleman Jr. are both unlikely to practice this week. There had been hope that they could return this week, potentially participate in the joint practices, and maybe even put themselves in position for preseason action. Based on Hafley's latest update, that now appears unlikely. Trader's situation is important because he projects to have a major role at safety. Because of that, Miami has every reason to be careful. Missing practice in August is never ideal, but the bigger concern would be whether this becomes something that threatens his availability for the regular season. Based on the information we have, there is no reason to jump to that conclusion. Right now, the Dolphins can afford to be cautious rather than push him back too quickly. Kevin Coleman Jr.'s situation is different because he is a rookie trying to establish himself in a wide receiver competition that is moving every single day. Coleman had a strong spring and had also gotten off to a good start during the early portion of training camp. But when a rookie misses multiple weeks, he loses something that is impossible to replace: live repetitions. While Coleman is recovering, Caleb Douglas is taking advantage. Douglas has been one of the biggest stories of Miami's wide receiver competition and has performed extremely well in camp. With Coleman missing time, the possible opening day picture at receiver is becoming much easier to imagine. Right now, Jalen Tolbert, Caleb Douglas, and Malik Washington have a real opportunity to emerge as Miami's primary 3 receivers. Tolbert can work outside. Douglas has continued to make his case. And Washington can operate from the slot. Coleman still has time to change the picture once he returns, but every practice he misses makes the challenge more difficult. Malik Washington is practicing. Douglas is practicing. Tolbert is practicing. They are building timing, earning trust, and giving the coaches something to evaluate. Coleman cannot do that while he is sidelined. And the rest of the competition has not produced someone who has clearly forced his way ahead of those names. Tutu Atwell has not made enough noise to change the picture yet, while Chris Bell is still working his way back from injury. Theo Weiss Jr., Jalen Reagor, Taj Washington, and the other receivers are also part of this competition, but at this moment, the opportunity is sitting right in front of Tolbert, Douglas, and Malik Washington. This is why these August injuries matter even when they are not season-ending. A player does not have to miss the regular season for an injury to change his season. Sometimes missing 2 weeks of